Welcome back to Bread and Butter, everybody, where we are serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. Today, Doc will not be with us today. He's a little under the weather, but we have a special guest today, and that is, I'm going to try to say it correctly, Magesa. How'd I do?
Yes, you did well.
All right, fantastic. Magesa, I know very well, or at least very well, tangentially from being in the Coin Concede Discord. We interact about cards a lot, and she's also been. We'll talk about where you've been recently, but what have you been doing inside the game of Hearthstone lately?
Well, what I've been doing, right now, I've kind of been bouncing back and forth between Twist and Standard. So in Twist, I was doing Overload Shaman, and then I was doing Aggro Beast Druid because that deck is ridiculously good. And I mean, even, the tracker side statistics are always a bit inflated, but it was like 72% or something on HS Replay, which is crazy. There were a lot of Hala mages, though. Even though I was doing all right versus them at a certain point, I wanted to switch to Standard, and also I do want to hit Legend and Standard this month still. So been playing, trying to learn Fire and Rage and Outcast Demon Hunter a little bit better, because those are decks that are really fun and have a little bit of a learning curve that I just haven't gotten myself up as much this month. So I was really taking a look at those, and also with an eye to the Coin Concede listener series that I'm in. I want to bring them, but I need a little practice before I bring them. Not the kind of deck you want to bring.
I don't know if you need any practice at Warrior, because I've tried bringing Warrior every week, and it has been banned every week. So if that goes, you can just bring it and never expect to play it.
There we go. Just hope that my opponent doesn't listen and just bluff. Just
I've actually done that at times where it's like, I want to bring these two decks. This deck is likely to get banned. I haven't been playing it. I'm just going to bring it, hope they ban it, and just play the two decks I'm familiar with. Is it smart? No. Has it worked? Yes.
There you go.
So,
now my problem is that people know that I really like the Priest decks, and so they'll just ban it even if the stats say they shouldn't. I'll be like, Magesa likes Priest, so we better ban Priest.
I've run into the same thing when I played a lot of Shadow Priests, is people they didn't matter what else I was bringing. They're like, Tito's playing the Shadow Priest, so let's not let him play that, which is fine. So I haven't played Twist yet. I haven't played one game of Twist yet. And I realized, so Ben Heastone said that, hey, if the progression for the event doesn't happen like it normally does, and it's a bug and they know about it, but that event's going to end up, real soon over. But I wanted to, so I missed the first week or the last week of June when they had the event start, or when they had the first season. So we started in this next month. And I want to hit Legend before I even get into Twist. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to get distracted. I don't want to find some fun there, because I want to just get to Legend. I want to be done. I want to get as high up as I can and then try to maintain that. So I'm trying to do that before I hit Twist. And it's going very middling. I was doing really well last night on stream. I was playing I wasn't playing the Chad Druid. I was playing Big Druid, that I think is a Jombre version. It runs the Rhythm and Roots, it runs the Drum Circles, it runs the 6 mana 4/4s, summon a 2 mana a 2 health copy of a minion in your deck.
Masked Reveler.
Right, Masked Reveler. It's running Neptulons. It's a fun deck.
Classic Jombre, sounds fun.
So I was talking about it in the Discord yesterday. I was like, well, when should I coin Wild Growth on turn one, if you have a coin and an innervate? And we were having a discussion about that, and they were saying, what are you running this deck for? You should be running the more optimized version, which is the one that has the Behemoths and the Chad and whatever. And I said, all right, first game I lose, I'll switch to that deck. And I ran off like a 9-game win streak. And I was up to about D2, and then I lost, and I played a few games with that deck, and I started winning and losing, and then I'll just finish the climb this morning or whatever, and I've just fallen back down to D4, D3. So I'm not sure which deck I'm going to use. I just want to finish the climb and get there. But it's been a lot of fun. But I want to get there done. I don't want to get to twist until that happens. But what have you been doing outside the game?
Well, I had this week off from work. I teach middle and high school, and I am teaching over the summer, but not this week. But I'm taking a graduate school class, studying educational therapy, and it's really interesting, and it's a ton of work. So I've been trying to catch up on all of that. Going on a bit of a road trip tomorrow up to the Sierras. But so that'll be fun. That'll be kind of the one little trip thing that I do this week. Went to the county fair with a friend who we've gone to the county fair every year since high school. So that was fun to be able to do that with her. But yeah, I actually I'll have a couple days when I'm really on Hearthstone, and then a couple days when I'm busy with life and then have to catch up. I'll be you have so many unread messages on the new expansion discussion, and I'm going, oh gosh, do I read them or do I not read them? I need to know the new cards and keep up with the reveals and keep up with the game and the listener series, and so I'm trying to find that balance. But I feel like I've done a pretty good job this week of finding the balance of staying engaged with the game to the extent that I really enjoy being engaged with the game, but also not falling behind in real life obligations. So,
okay, we need to take this back a step though. County fair.
Mm-hmm.
What are your go-to foods at the county fair?
I had a mac and cheese that actually ended up being very bougie because it had Gouda instead of regular cheese, and a ton of garlic, and also garlic fries, obviously, and a churro. So those were my main. You have to really think carefully about what you're going to get for dessert at the county fair because there's so many options. And that wasn't actually necessarily my first choice, but then I wanted something a little bit lighter because I had eaten so much mac and cheese. And I'm going, this is how I tell I'm not 18 anymore. I don't have an endless ability to eat. So, but yeah, what are your county fair foods?
Well, obviously it's usually corn dogs sometimes, funnel cakes, or depending on where it is, funnel cakes or malasadish, or some version of a fried dough with sugar and cinnamon.
Classic.
Yeah, I that's usually my go-to. I like going to less country fairs and more rib fests where it's there's a theme, there's a food theme, and so we have rib fest coming up, I think in a few weeks, and it's got 7 or 8 different booths of people bringing the best ribs, or that they say is the best ribs, and it's hard to have actually really good ribs from any of these places because they're trying to do them so fast. Their sauce is good, but it's just slather on. It doesn't have that time to absorb. So what we've done a lot of times, especially since COVID, is instead of bringing everybody to the fair, I'll go to the fair. I'll go to 3 different booths. I'll get some ribs to go. We let them sit for a day, and then we eat them, and they're a lot better. So
Smart.
I like the ribs, yeah. But yeah, I'll eat something like a fried Oreo or a fried Twinkie. That just to try it. As they say, you can deep fry just about anything. Not that you should deep fry just about anything, but it works.
It's America. It's the celebration of America is that we deep fry whatever we feel like.
The celebration of needing to see your doctor in your 40s. But yes. But I just speaking of eating, I just came back from Disney World, and that's why I didn't really participate in Twist when it came out. And of course, my travel day was Tuesday of last week, which was when Twist was released, and busy there, and I'm like, you know what, I could probably try to get a game in or two, but I'm taking the week off. I'm just kind of disconnecting and doing the thing, and I got to go on I got to go on Tron, I got to go on Guardians of the Galaxy. Both fun rides. I don't think Tron was too short. Really fun. Too short for the hour-long wait you have. And do you know how these work now? You have to sign up for a virtual queue. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, you have to be on your phone and you have to be clicking on it. And if
Wow.
you don't get it by 7:01, you're not going to make that queue. They reopen it again at 1 o'clock, but some rides you have to get in that queue. And that queue doesn't get you right on the ride. It's not like Fast Pass. You can actually individually pay for a Fast Pass for these rides that are like $20. So you say, I'm already paying to go to the park. You pay for the Genie, which lets you go onto the like scheduled lightning rounds for a lot of rides. But then there's also special Genie rides for the new rides, which cost more, which gets you in the quicker lanes to do the rides and spend less time. Now, it seems crazy. I actually don't hate some of the systems because it's a time versus money thing, right? Like you can be a free-to-play player. You're going to eventually get all the cards you need. It's going to take you a long time in investment. Or you can just buy packs. This is the same thing here. You can pay to not wait in a 2-hour line, or you can wait in a 2-hour line and then do the same thing. So it depends on. I always think we're already spending all this money to go to Disney World. What's an extra whatever amount of money to save myself time? So we did that. But the Guardians was a lot of fun. It's really like a bunch of rides all mixed into one. It's like Space Mountain meets Rock and Roller Coaster meets Rise of the Resistance because you're in a. Have you been on any of these yet?
I haven't been recently. No, I went probably 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. So I haven't been on the new rides.
So, well, Guardians just came out a couple months ago, I think. Or actually, no, Guardians was a year ago, Tron was a couple months ago. And the Guardians ride, it's a roller coaster, like the Rock and Roller Coaster, the Aerosmith one. But, so it's in the dark like Space Mountain. But at the same time, like, the cart shifts and turns. So, like, your individual spot turns to look at a screen where you see a big thing going on, and you got the music playing behind you. I guess there's 6 different songs, and it's like, I got Disco Inferno, which was great. But it's a lot of fun. It's intense. Like, I see people bringing, like, 5-6-year-olds on it. I don't know why you would do something like that, but it is what it is. But we're not just here to, so that's why I missed Twist. Obviously, I'll try to get to it before the end of the month, but I had a thing. But now's the time for our interview. So, Magesa, how did you get started in gaming, and more specifically, Hearthstone?
Well, I've always played games. I have a twin brother, and we always played games together. Eventually, we kind of diverged in our taste of games. But when we were growing up, we had to like agree on the games, and we always played together. I played a lot of like role-playing games, both on the computer and tabletop, like strategy games, indie games like Slay the Spire, more recently like Hades, of course. I played a bit of Magic the Gathering, not a ton, and a little bit of World of Warcraft, not a ton. But those kind of set me up for Hearthstone. A friend of mine got me into it in college, and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't play it like super seriously. I was hanging out in like gold, platinum, playing really bad homebrew priest decks mostly, and like trying to make inner fire combos work even when they weren't good. So, but I had a good time. And then I took a break just because I had more real life stuff going on in like late 2019. I needed to kind of be more focused in IRL things, but then during the pandemic and Darkmoon Faire, which was late 2020, I came back and I got a lot more into the community and like learned more about the fact that like, oh, there's sites with like data about decks and there's all these streamers and there's so much more community that I could engage with. And that really, really improved me as a player. So I hit Legend about 2 years ago with unnerfed Illucia Shadow Priest, which was totally needed. I hit it like within hours of the nerf going in. It was like, surely I can pilot this deck to Legend in the last possible second before its very well-deserved nerf. And then I managed to sort of just really keep improving every month and even get into the 11x range. And my peak, which is not where I am right now, but my peak was rank 270 in March as a finish. Thank you. with the Burn Undead Priest that was popular in March of the Lich King. And that was a really exciting experience to be playing against like people with golden card backs, streamers, and then you could go look up on the stream after what they said while they either beat you or got beaten. I would get like really nervous the first couple times that happened. Then I didn't quite, it took me a while to adjust to the change in the meta. I haven't quite been able to get to that same level again, but I think that I know it's something that I can do, and I know that, it's hard to break into a new rank bracket and then not be in that rank bracket. But I think growth doesn't necessarily work like I've made this progress and so now I'm just always there and it's easy to be there now. I think that also, I had a lot more going on in real life sort of after March than I did during March. So that's also something important to keep in mind. And I think I'm learning a broader variety of decks as opposed to when I was really at my peak. I was like very much a one deck specialist with the Undead Priest, and before that with Naga Priest. Just like I have like 800 games of Naga Priest, like the same build in my deck tracker.
I did quite the same thing with Shadow Priest, and that's kind of when I hit my, I forget what my peak was. I have it written down somewhere, but it was, nice to see. I ran into Wicked Good, and Wicked was like, I'm kind of surprised to see you up here. Like he kind of double took the head out. I went on a crazy streak where I got up to like, 1,000, and I got early legend once where I was under triple digits, and I was pretty happy with that. And I do the same thing. Like I would find a deck. I would always struggle to find a deck, and then when I found the deck, I would stick with it and play it. Like I played Habu Gabu Shaman to legend, and it took a while to get there. And I did the Undead Priest, and I had Big Beast Hunter, and like I would latch on. Once I found a deck that I was pretty comfortable with, I would latch onto it. But then recently, I've started doing the THL. And so I'm trying to do that less. But I also like playing the same deck. Like, even with the Shadow Priest, 800, 900 games, whatever it was. And I would still get into a matchup, and I'd be like, what am I going to... What's my mulligan here? I have 2 of these and 1 of these. How do I want to do this? And I don't think that it ever gets old. I know some people get tired of playing the same decks. I don't. I love when I find a deck and just kind of going with it. And it's great. But... So important question, follow-up here. Who's a better gamer, you or your brother?
Well, it depends on what kind of game. If you're talking board game or card game, I am. If you're talking like a MMO or like a... the role-playing games, we're about equal. MMO, he's better. Anything that's like timed and action-based, he's better. And he's definitely better than me at Stellaris. We tried to play that together, and I was doing fine, and then my enemies started attacking me, and I'm like, wait, you didn't tell me how to do the war thing in this properly. He's like, oh, well, you should have been doing this and this and this and this and this the whole time. And I'm like, can we start over?
Now, does he play Hearthstone?
He does not play Hearthstone. He's done just enough to know what I'm talking about when I talk about it. And he's played some like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering, so he has some basic concepts of what a card game is made of, but haven't been able to actually get him into Hearthstone. I think he's the kind of guy who knows what kind of games he wants to play and plays them. And it's always been difficult to give him recommendations because he kind of already knows what he's interested in. So
sure, but as his twin sister, you probably know the right buttons to push to say, oh, get his competitive juices going. Say, oh, okay, fine. I guess you'd probably want to be good at this game anyway, or whatever. You can't like poke him a little bit to kind of get him in that direction.
Some, but he's also wary. I used to do that a lot with the only game, like Nintendo game that I ever beat him at growing up was Mario Kart, and he got wise to my tricks of trying to convince him to play Mario Kart instead of Super Smash Brothers, which he was better at and still is better at. I am still better at Mario Kart. So no, we'll try to split it up equitably. I did get him into Hades. That was like my one recommendation recently that he took and actually was like, oh, this game is amazing. But that's because the game is amazing. So
yeah, no lies told here. And to be fair, my 9-year-old is better than me in Mario Kart, and I just have to learn to accept that. But you recently have been on Coin Concede not once but twice in the last 2 months, I think. Are you a content creator, or are you aspiring to be one? So, like, where is this going? How did this happen, and where is it going?
So, I mean, I was definitely surprised and really honored to be asked to be on Coin Concede. I think I've just really been since I found the Coin Concede Discord maybe a year and a half ago or something like that. I've really been really active and really tried to be sort of a positive and knowledgeable and just supportive person in the community. Of course, I think there's a lot of really great people there. And so I was like, they had World 8 who's from the Discord on, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, but he makes like meta decks. But I was really glad to be asked. And I definitely, I don't have any previous content creation. Obviously, I kind of talk and explain things for a living as a teacher, but not on the internet. But I am interested, I don't have any like definitive things that I can say right now about future plans, but I am interested in podcasting. I'm potentially interested in streaming or like educational YouTube videos. So I've been I'm taking some steps in that direction, but it's still something in the works to some extent. But I have been thinking for a long time about how I would like to get into the space in some way, and thinking about some of the things that I would like to talk about, such as what we'll have as our feature today, things that I might be able to bring to the conversation, as well as just, trying to learn about everyone else who's in the community. And, one thing that I really love about my relationship with the game of Hearthstone is that it is a community for me, and it's not just a game that I'm playing. And that makes it really different than the other games that I play.
And you've already mastered some skills. You just put through a little tease right there for a future segment. That's you're already well on your way. Just curious, does your partner also play Hearthstone, or just enough to know what you're talking about? Or
also just enough to know what I'm talking about. He was really funny. He'd go and like, yeah, when I first got him into it, he would say, I think I'll lose 3 games of Hearthstone. He was just terrible. Because he has no gaming background really, or not in this kind of game anyway. Really smart guy, and not particularly background in this. I know that he could learn a lot more, but he ended up kind of stopping playing after a little while, but has learned enough and paid enough attention to what I'm saying, which I appreciate, to have a good sense of it, and also just like overhear the podcast that I have going. So if I'm tilted, he'd be like, what would Hat say about this? I don't play when I'm tilted. Okay.
very nice.
So he's been very, very supportive of my, taking time for Hearthstone. Obviously in a way that also means that we're taking time with each other as well. And in my thinking about moving more into the community, potentially also as a content creator and not just as a person in the Discord. So yeah, I've been very much appreciated that, but no, not currently. I don't have any real life friends who still play. But
fair. And if your boyfriend is listening to you listen to podcasts, if you happen to listen to Blizzlet, he might have different questions for you. Ever listen to the Blizzlet, but they go a little a different direction with things. So what is your favorite class?
My favorite class is Priest. It's kind of always been Priest, but different sides of Priest. These days, Purple Priest is generally either Purple Priest, or if Overkill Priest was better, I would definitely be jamming a lot of that. But the proactive Smork You Priest. I do play other classes, especially if there's, decks that are aggressive but have some sort of flexibility in their plan, or tend to be my favorite. So like Paladin was a lot more interesting to me, like many people, I think, when it had the Horn of the Windlord, even after it got nerfed, because that gives some burst damage in addition to your ability to win through the board. So you have that flexibility of more than one way to put together the damage. And I really like decks like that, although sometimes I'll also just play a straight minion snowball deck, like the Swarm Undead.
It's interesting you say that though, because most people don't say priest is my favorite class. I really like being proactive in back-to-back sentences, because that seems counter, except for the recent Shadow Priest. That seems counterintuitive to what priest normally likes to do.
It definitely is. I think part of why proactive priest decks have been appealing to me is that they tend to have another dimension. Not as much the current Swarm Undead, but they tend, because a lot of priest cards don't tend in that direction, their proactive decks, such as like Naga Priest, had more than, sort of multiple ways to go at the win. It's also just kind of historical class loyalty. I used to be just like a value pile control player. I would look forward to the control priest versus control warrior matchups that were going to take half an hour and get down to fatigue. You're trying not to play cards. So I do appreciate that as well, and I have maybe some loyalty to that. But yeah, just for whatever reason, the proactive priest strategies have really clicked with me in the past few years. And I got Legend for the first time with Shadow Priest, so there you go.
Now, is there a deck that you... Wait, Shadow Priest? It was Lucia in the Shadow Priest?
Yeah, she had been in Control Priest, where she was, I think, controversial, but not overpowered. And then when Shadow Priest became a thing in Stormwind, it was a problem because you'd play this hyper-aggressive deck with Void Touch Attendant and a bunch of like 1-2 drops, and then and run out of gas. And then you just play Elysia, steal your opponent's hand, give them nothing. So they basically skip a turn. You play all their cards because you had nothing else to do. And then you give it back, they have no hand, so they basically skip 2 turns. And you have a whole bunch of refill from whatever they happen to have in their hands. So it was absolutely not how that card was meant to be played, and absolutely needed to be nerfed into the ground. And it was a lot of fun. So
yeah, I just didn't realize it was Shadow. Like, I remember people really hated Elysia. I didn't really care that much, although every once in a while it would tilt you. But like, it didn't feel like it was that big of a deal. But then, yeah. So how about a class? Is there any class you really don't like, or if you could pick one class to remove, like your choice, this class goes away, which class would it be?
Oh gosh, I mean, the class that I've personally played the least of is Warlock. But I did enjoy Phylactery Warlock. But I don't know that I necessarily need to delete, like, that Warlock generally has done a lot of crimes. Yeah, that's a good question.
Also not on the list I provided.
Yes, I think maybe just Blood Death Knight. We can keep the other Death Knights. I enjoy Unholy Death Knight.
I don't think there's a lot of people that would argue with you on that one.
I just when I'm trying Outcast, which of course, like, that's its worst matchup, I run into one. So I just went and put them at 5, going, well, they have 30 cards in their deck, they might not have Blood Boil. They had Blood Boil, so I left.
They always have Blood Boil. And then they always have Wrathweaver, and I always get tilted by Wrathweaver. Not because it clears my board, not because it's a 5/5, but it also generates corpses. It's like, do we really need to have Twisting Nether on a stick that also generates corpses? But anyway, I don't want to go off on that because there's a channel for that. We can talk in. So what's your favorite deck of all time? I think we've already kind of alluded to it, but
my favorite deck of all time is Naga Priest, because Naga Priest is able... There was kind of 3 game plans. There was the just snowball early game plan. There was the dare I say mid-range game plan, where maybe you didn't have as quick a start because you didn't find your Serpent Wig right away, but then you're able to get some really big minions kind of around turn 4. And sometimes if a deck couldn't deal with that, that was enough. And some decks you really needed to just kind of have any board stick in the late game, like any minion at all. And then play, you know, Radiant Elemental, your whole hand, a million Serpent Wigs and Bless, and then hit them for like 30 with one minion. So having that flexibility of trying to figure out from what you drew and what your opponent is doing and what the matchup is, which one you want to do. It was the kind of deck where you can jam 800 games and still really be learning a lot about the deck. And then I also really enjoyed the what we called the 7-up priest, 7 undead priest, which was basically the Vicious Syndicate burn undead priest list, but with one brittle skin zombie. Even though brittle skin zombie is objectively worse than the priest one. His name is escaping me right now.
Shadowed Spirit.
Shadowed Spirit. Yeah, clearly better. But having one extra, just because when you didn't draw an undead, the deck felt so bad. And there weren't that many. So having one more really helped with the brick draws. So yeah, those are probably my top 2, as I had alluded. The Naga Priest, I have a quick funny story. I had a student who liked to get me off topic. Of course, students love to get you off topic. It was a like one-on-one class, and he asked me whether I played any games, and I was like, you know, I asked him if he'd heard of Hearthstone, and he goes, "Oh, my dad plays Hearthstone." So we had this conversation like every class. He'd be like, "My dad wants to know this," and I'd tell him. He'd come back, and he found out I was playing Naga Priest, and he came back one day and said, "So my dad tried the deck, and it's terrible, and he hates it." I don't think it was ever a super popular deck. Because if you don't draw the Serpent Wigs, you're sad.
It eventually evolved to be, if I recall, it eventually evolved a little bit past just being Serpent Wigs. But, yeah, it was it was a deck that evolved over time. I really liked it. I played a lot of games with it. But, I think we've already kind of answered this as well, but what kind of deck styles do you prefer? It seems like mostly aggro is your jam.
Mostly, and not exclusively. I do play, like, I really liked the Habu Gabu Shaman as well.
That I was gonna bring that up because you were saying I like decks that have lots of different outs and ideas and different directions it can go. And Habu Gabu Shaman, I think, really exemplified that because every game you could win in an entirely different way. And what you would base your win condition really on the matchup and be like, okay, what am I doing here? It's way different against aggro than this. It had so many different directions to go to. I love that deck. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that deck, and I think there's a lot of, you know, I can find fun and definitely in different kinds of decks. And then I'll even do sort of a control coaching with like Wicked Good once in a while, which is fun. But I trust myself to navigate that much more if he's also on the call.
I usually make him do aggro when I have a coaching with him, except for the one time where I was like, "Should we do Smalma Priest?" He's like, "No," because what'll happen is I'll just be yelling at you to move really fast in the last 20 seconds, and we won't accomplish anything. So, but I usually
it's hard to do coachings on. Yeah, when it's an APM turn, you kind of just have to go. But yeah, mostly the Smork. Yeah.
Nice. So, what other modes do you play?
Well, I'm liking Twist. I play Wild every once in a while. I'll see like a Raffle deck, and it'll be really silly, and I'll try it. Since I have been playing since 2015, I have enough cards to usually not have to craft very much if I see a Wild deck. But I never know I never know what my opponent is doing in Wild, ever. Duels is fun. I haven't played a ton recently, but I enjoy Duels. I always kind of forget about it and then come back and go, this is fun, I should do this more. Battlegrounds, I have played it kind of in the way that my boyfriend has played Hearthstone. If people talk about it, I can vaguely follow what they're talking about, but I don't know the meta. So
I think if you just invest, like, you know, I'm gonna play Battlegrounds for this afternoon, or just, you know, put a good 2-3 hour block into it, and then usually people will just get hooked. And even if you're not figuring it all out, the the way those games work, it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you too. I rarely play duels. I occasionally play arena, not very often. I haven't tried Fist yet. We already talked about that. Wild, I like playing some weird decks. Like I usually like take like a Mark McKay deck and play that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love playing Sunkeeper Raw Rogue because nobody sees that coming, and when you pull off that combo, which you can actually do fairly consistently, when people are getting hit in the dome for 20, and then they kill it, and you just get it cheat death back, and you do it again. It's just a beautiful thing. No one knows how that card works. But to wrap up our interview, what is something somebody might find surprising about you? It doesn't have to be serious. It doesn't have to be. It could be something quirky.
Well, I'm realizing what I put down, I kind of already gave away what I had originally thought of putting, which is that I used to play, even though I'm like pretty smork now, I used to play very kind of value pile, and I thought Ticketus Warlock was unbeatable and terrible. Because it was for me, since I had no win condition in my deck. Turns out you do need a win condition. Against decks with that destroyed, 1/3 of your deck at least. So, yeah, I don't know. There's something people find surprising about me. This is kind of random, but my go-to fun fact tends to be that I am named after my mother's cat, not my username, but my real name. She had a cat that she named after that was like her soulmate cat. And so even though my name, it's technically like my great aunt's name, but really it was because she wanted to name me after her cat, who died a little bit before I was born.
There's no thought of like reincarnation here, like, oh, this is my cat now in human form or anything.
I mean, I would be honored to be that cat in human form. It seems like it was a really, really special cat. Who, like, a very independent cat, also kind of a ruthless hunter. Now we keep our cats indoors, but that wasn't really the way that people did things at the time. And definitely, if they're like, my aunt had a really annoying blue jay in her garden, and then one day came home to find the blue jay's head on her pillow, like Godfather style, as a gift from this cat. But otherwise, I swear, really sweet cat. And so, yes, I ruthlessness aside, I don't consider myself someone who would put the blue jay head on the pillow, but I would be honored to be a very sweet cat's reincarnation, and we'll keep the ruthlessness to Hearthstone.
I don't know if that's ruthless. A cat's gonna cat, and that is just cat's instinct to say, hey, thanks for the food, and here's a gift back for you. I took care of that mouse that's been troubling you. There was a bird that clearly was menacing you. I took care of it. Here you go. I mean, that's just a cat being a cat.
That's true.
I'm actually going to share it because we ask, I guess, this question sometimes, but I don't think we ever provide these facts. I used to work at a place in college called Sugar Jones, and what this place was it was in a college town. I went to UMass Amherst. And you used to call up like you were ordering pizza or calzones, but you would order hot, fresh-baked cookies. So you would call up and be like, hey, I want 3 chocolate chip, 2 white chocolate macadamia, an oatmeal raisin, and whatever. And we used to have deals. And we would deliver them hot, fresh, out of the oven with milk and Ben & Jerry's ice cream.
Nice.
It was fantastic.
In a college town? Perfect.
Oh, yeah, and I used to be, so I was in the 5 college system, and we had, it was like Amherst College, UMass, Hampshire, which was kind of the stoner school, and then you had Smith and Holyoke, which were the 2 all-girl schools. And like you always knew right around 11 o'clock was when the stoners from Hampshire would be like, hey, man, you got some cookies? I want the cookies. But I miss that place. I used to be able to go to parties after hours, and I bring some cookies that I bake at the very end. I was known as the Sugar Jones guy. It was great.
I did tour Hampshire when I was looking at schools and got that impression. I toured like so many schools, and I applied to 14. It was really excessive. Like, that's not necessary.
I applied to two schools. I applied to WPI, which is the school I wanted to go to. I got accepted. I had issues with my SATs were like 10 points off.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to retake them again. I was going to go ROTC, and they were like, well, too late. I said, all right, whatever. I took the test anyway, and then I decided to enlist into the National Guard. And then I was about to go on vacation to Florida the week before I was to go into MEPS, which is where you go when you process to be in the Army. And I got a letter saying, hey, your application has been accepted to WPI. And I was just like, you know what, whatever. And I had already, when I went, the day before I left for Army, I applied to UMass Amherst. And like 3 days after I got back, I got accepted. I started a semester late. It was great. Wouldn't change anything because I love my time at UMass, and WPI would have been fun, but you know, it is what it is. But anyway, now that we've talked a little bit about you, we know who you are, you know, so much for as much as you can know somebody in a 15-minute conversation. Let's briefly talk about the new expansion. So, we're not going to get into it too much today. We're already 40 minutes in, and we still have a main topic to get to. We'll talk about the Titans over the next few weeks as we get closer. But this is a new expansion. There's a couple keywords. Each class is going to get a Titan and a Keeper, I believe. The Titan
Yes.
is a new mechanic, a new keyword, and basically you get a minion that can attack, but it has kind of like a location-like ability where you discover one of their 3 abilities. And each one has these unique abilities and maybe some text on their card that happens. And once you've used up all 3 of those abilities, which you can only use 1 a turn, you can then attack with them. But as crazy as that sounds, they're minions, so they can still be interacted with. So they can be killed, they can be polymorphed, they can be whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how dominating they are. Now, a lot of these Titans have really interesting powers that even just getting them down and using once could be super good. Like, for instance, Eonar for Druid, I think that's the name, that's how I say it. Their abilities are crazy, like restore your health to full. I think one is it restore your mana crystals? I could be wrong about that. But
Restore your hero to full health, or draw cards until your hand is full, or refresh your mana crystals. She has 10 mana, but you can refresh all of your mana crystals if you want the same turn that you play her and then still have 10 more mana. And you're Druid, so it's not turn 10.
Right. And now these cards cannot be generated. You cannot discover them. You cannot... Now, you can discover them from your deck, I assume. Like if you draw a card from your deck, draw a copy from your deck. I'm assuming that works. But you cannot randomly generate them out of thin air. But so far we've gotten, I believe, the Mage one, the Paladin one, the Death Knight one, the Demon Hunter one, the Hunter one, the Warrior one. So I think we're about halfway through. The Priest one. What do you think of the Priest one as a self-proclaimed priest main?
Well, definitely not a Shadow Priest card, but, or at least it would be. I do run into Shadow Priests sometimes that are like a hybrid control thing, but I do think that this card is interesting for, I mean, it's definitely a lot of value, and Control Priest doesn't tend to struggle in the value department, but whenever there's, late game slugfests to control decks, that's always helpful to have more value.
So to let our viewers know what this card does. It's
a
7 mana 3/10 Titan with after you use an ability, discover any legendary minion. Any is an interesting term there. Obviously will not include the Titans, I believe, because that's what we already said. But its abilities are you can either shape the stars, which is to choose a non-Titan minion, summon a copy of it with +2/+2. And that's not your minion, that's a minion. So that could be your opponent's Blackwater Behemoth. You can strike from history, which is to choose to remove 2 enemy minions, remove them from the game. That sounds like a poof effect, not a destroy. So that sounds like it would bypass death rattles. That sounds like it would be basically silence and remove. And then you could also Vision of Heroes, which is summon a random 6 cost minion, give it taunt and lifesteal. So this is sick. This has a lot of value. I don't think it needs. I know you said it doesn't really feel like it has Shadow synergy. I don't think it needs to. I think you still put this in, and this is like a break in case of emergency. Hey, I'm on turn 7. I got a Titan. I can do something with this. I don't think there's. That's what I think of all the Titans that I've seen so far. Is some of them you could probably build around, but I think they're just like, this is a good card. This is a Ziliax. This is, Tar Creeper when it used to be good. This is like a card you just throw in your deck no matter what.
Yes, some of the Colossals are that way, like Leviathan and Krakatoa, right? Like, mostly, unless you have a very specific reason not to, you throw it in the deck. And I do think that a lot of the, especially because they have 3 abilities, they're very flexible, many of the Titans, and so that means that you don't necessarily have to only put them in a certain kind of deck. I mean, some of them, you're probably going to want to, you might build a deck around a particular ability that they have, and, really low to the ground decks may not want to have this potentially clogging up their hand, although if you're more like a burn shadow undead, I would see you being more likely to, say, want to copy one of your minions in the late game if you've kind of run out of gas. With the Priest Titan, since it has that shape of the stars.
Yeah, especially with something like maybe a Shadowed Spirit. And you generate a legendary minion on top of that, so.
Right, so you have something else to play next turn. And it is discovered, which we know from the Countess, is much better than random. Of course, that's always true, but and any here, I believe you're right that it still doesn't include Titans, but which you can't get in any way. Like, you can't evolve into them, you can't summon them. You can copy an existing Titan though with like Cover Artist. So I imagine Cover Artist is going to show up more than it has so far.
I think people are thinking that, but I think it's the same people that thought Tony plus the Jailer plus, our Fires of Zinajari plus Steam Cleaner was going to be this meta tyrant. It's something that sounds nice on paper, but the amount of time you'll see a few highlights of these things, but I personally don't think it's going to happen a lot. But I think people are going to try the heck out of it, at least in the first week.
Definitely people are going to try the heck out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I won't. I don't think it's going to be the meta tyrant that people think they are. But the interesting thing is, like Cover Artist, you copy it in the state it's in. So if you copy, so what I wonder is, if I use it, so the mage one's interesting. Let me pull up the mage one. This is Nurganon, and it's a use an ability, double the power of the other abilities, and you can either deal 5 damage, enemies cards cost 1 more next turn, or you can cast 1 random secret. So if you use, like, say, deal 5 damage, then the next ability would discover 2 secrets, or make the minions cost 2 more mana. So in theory, what happens is you use an ability. Now your next thing is doubled. You Cover Artist, and then you use the ability. There's only 2 left. When you copy it, it's in the state that it's in. So it's only going to have 2 abilities left. So in theory, you're already ready to double them. My question is, when you copy it, are you copying it in the state that it's already cast a spell that turn or not? And I don't know if I'm sure Hat's already answered this. I think people assume that you can, but I'm thinking if you copy it in the state, it's kind of like when you copy something that's frozen. Boom, it's frozen, right? It's great. I got that big minion, but it's still frozen. So I don't know how it's going to work, but it'll be interesting at least.
From what I've seen, it's like it has Rush. So if you copy a Rush minion, even if you copied a Rush minion that attacks, it can still attack. If it's frozen, it's still frozen, right? But so if you have a frozen Titan, then it can't use its ability because you use an ability in place of attacking. But from what I saw from Hat, the if you copy Norganon, and I believe that Leo, the game designer, answered this as well, but you can use it right away. But if you copy Norganon after he used something, then you only have the 2 left, but they are doubled and you can use it right away. So theoretically, and I think this is kind of like the Tony combo, I don't think this is really the thing to do. Theoretically, you play Norganon, which is 6 mana. You play Reverberations, play Norganon first, cast like a Mage Secret, play Reverberations, make your enemies' cards cost 2 more next turn. Cast 2 coins that you got from the Dispenso bot. So this is very ambitious. Cast Reverberations again, now you can deal 20 damage because it started at 5 and then it was doubled twice. This doesn't seem like it's worth 20 damage, but it is a lot of damage. And it is technically possible to do that in 1 turn with Norganon.
And I would like to point out, just aside, that so we've already known who the lead designers have been recently. Like we know that Cora did Nathria. We know that Celestalon did Rise of Lich King, March of the Lich King. We know that Leo did Festivals. The lead designer for this one is Alex Smith. So his Twitter handle is at Gonzo, GONNZOHS. So make sure you go give him a follow and give him, good kudos for leading a very interesting set. I don't think it's been as publicized that he is the lead as some of the other folks, and this set's looking very exciting. So I think we should all give him some credit. Now I mentioned keepers. Now there's not a keyword keeper. It's kind of based on the lore. And for example, we have Tyr, who is a keeper. And he's a paladin keeper, and his ability is to resurrect a 2, 3, and 4 attack paladin minion. So obviously you think of things like the 2, 3 that gives minion summon rush and divine shield. You think of Anoyo troop. You think of, I believe, Kangor is 4 attack. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Kangor is 3, I think. Hold on.
Oh, okay, so even better.
It's 4. No. Wait. Kangor. I must have spelled it wrong. Yeah, it is 3 attack.
Okay, so perfect. So he falls into that, and it never hurts getting a second Kangor after a Priestess Silence and Killjoys. But they're not necessarily a keyword, but they're going to be very powerful and prevalent. Are there any other final cards you want to talk about that have been released so far before we move on to our main topic?
I'm just generally excited to see more of the cards. I think the way that they're going to do the reveals this time is really cool, where they're revealing all the Titans, and then we'll kind of get a full class every day, so one half of it released by one content creator, and then the second half, and then you can go ahead and theory craft. This will be after neutrals, so first the Titans, then neutrals, and then classes on the same day, so then you can theory craft right away, which I think is really cool, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I don't theory craft. I say, oh, this would be cool in my head with if we do this, and that's about it, and then other people do it, and I'm like, all right, great. And it doesn't mean I don't like building decks. I like playing the set until, like, even with Warcraft. So I've played Warcraft for years. I'm kind of on a break right now, but like people are all excited about the new sets and what's coming out. I'm like, wait, I haven't accomplished all the achievements that I want to do, and I still have things to get done. And I always wanted to finish what I was in the middle of, and I never could because then the next thing came out. So I'm looking forward to the new sets, but I never theory craft. What are your thoughts on? I haven't played it yet. I've had it played against me a couple times, but the set card this time around is thankfully bad. It's the Prison of Yogg. Basically, what it does is it's a location that's neutral, and when you use it, it's 7 mana. That you heard me, 7 mana for a location. When you use it, you target anybody, a minion or a hero or us, whatever. And then it casts 4 random spells, and it tries to target the creature or person you targeted. It works a lot like the Archmage, the Rune of the Archmage, where it would try to hit your whatever was on the other side of the board first. But like if all their minions were dead and or all your minions were dead, and it gives something +2/+2, it would give it to your enemy. So it targets that in that way. One thing I'm sure we're going to see people that are going to try at the very last second to target themselves to try to get those flash heals and the divine shield for your face and all that kind of stuff. But what are your thoughts so far? How have you enjoyed it?
I have not played it yet, but I feel like I should just, even though it'll make it take even longer to get to Legend, probably give it a try. I know that some people have been trying it. I saw like a clip of them, or I was like briefly on Kibler's stream and he was trying it. I can't remember exactly. It didn't quite do what he needed it to do, which I think is often the case with this card. I have heard from some people who've played it that it was better than they thought it would be, but and you can use it, if it doesn't go well once, you can use it 2 more times if spending the 7 mana wasn't, if you're in the kind of matchup where you could afford to spend the 7 mana for it. And you can target kind of, it's a bit of a Hail Mary, but you can target what you need that Hail Mary to target, at least. Like, I really need a buff on this minion so I can get 1 more damage for lethal, or I want to target their face. It's probably a little more reliable to get just a little bit of damage for lethal. Or I'm at 1 health and probably this won't work, but maybe it will. Or at least draw me a card or something. Because it is free on later activations. But 7 mana is a lot of mana up front. I am kind of happy that we don't have a release card that isn't completely changing up the meta, because I wanted to be able to explore this one a little bit more and not have like Renathal, which was fun, but definitely made a whole new meta by himself. So
I thought Sunwell was fine. Like, you see it occasionally, and occasionally your opponent generates something you're like, really? That you get the perfect card from that. But for the most part, it's not a great card. This is definitely the opposite of Renathal. It is not good. And it's definitely like I would say it's a win more card, but I kind of don't think it is. I think it's kind of a card that you say, hey, I'm already ahead in this game. Let me play this card and see how I can make things worse for myself. So that's kind of where I see this card being. But, hey, it's kind of a perfect flavor for what they're doing. The Prison of Yogg-Saron is kind of a chaotic fight in WoW, and you lose your sanity. So if a card's going to help you lose your sanity, I think it's a appropriate location there. But anyway, it's time for our main topic, and it's about something we haven't really been doing much in this episode. It's about being proactive. So
yes.
So what does it mean when we talk about being proactive?
So being proactive, I mean, people use it in terms of to be proactive within a game or a proactive deck, but in either case, it's about focusing on trying to end the game on your terms, rather than trying to kind of prolong the game or prevent what your opponent is trying to do, which of course is also strategies that a lot of people enjoy doing. In a proactive game, you're trying, usually that means you're being more aggressive. That means you're spending all your mana. You do still, I think there's kind of a misconception that proactive decks don't care about what the opponent is doing, or are just play the green card and go. And certainly all decks differ in their, how complex they are to play. But there can be proactive decks that are really difficult, ones that are really flexible. Often, if you've built a low to the ground deck, you don't just have 1 green card to play. Hopefully you don't. And you do want to know your opponent's deck and game plan, because you want to know how to make things awkward for them to stop you. Not so much to, and to know, like, what is the kind of thing that they can deal with, and what is the kind of thing that they can't deal with. And is there a way that I can approach things, make a board that, for example, if you're facing Blood DK and you are Enrage Warrior, let's get all my minions to too much health for Blood Boil. If you, you want to think about what is my opponent trying to do in this will help me try to win versus playing, proactive decks are playing to win versus playing to not lose. Reactive decks play to win eventually, but a proactive deck plays to win sooner rather than later.
So this sounds more like, so often we think like, hey, let's make them have the card. So Blood Boil, good example. I believe it's a 6-mana card, right? 5 or 6 mana.
5-mana card, yeah.
5-mana card, and you said, well, should I go wide here? What if they have Blood Boil? And a lot of times you say, well, let's just make them have it. Let's play our game plan. My game plan is to go wide, and in this case, that's not necessarily being proactive. That's being kind of sticking to your game plan. Where being proactive, as you're saying, is, well, okay. I can be proactive by, instead of going wide, maybe trying to buff the people that I have on there to get out of range of Blood Boil. So that way I'm not reacting to losing all my minions, but instead I have prepared myself for the inevitability of them having Blood Boil on 5, because they always do, and go face there, and then develop after that. Was that a good assessment?
Yeah, well, and I think it depends, right? So like today when I was playing Outcast, I was looking at it going, I cannot play around. There's nothing I can do if I play around Blood Boil. So I have to hope they don't have it. But if there was something I could do that played around Blood Boil that was still pressuring, right? That was still achieving some game plan that might beat a Blood DK, then that might have been the line. Or if you're playing Swarm Undead Priest against a Control Priest, you got, they probably have Shard of the Narrow. So can you make them play it before you've dumped your whole hand? And you can still then, because you don't want all your death rattles to get silenced, all your buffs to get silenced. It's very annoying to get Shard of the Narrow if you're Swarm Undead. But you want to try to think, well, maybe I'll have some reload. I won't, unless you have to put all in, which sometimes you do. Then you want to think about, playing around is something that you should do if you can afford to do it, and not do it if you can't afford to do it. And that's part of what makes it hard and I won't pretend that I always make that decision correctly. But being proactive is not just always making them have it. It's also thinking about how can I best push damage in a way that's going to be effective.
Now, with proactive, when we talk about this, proactive doesn't always mean you're doing something. It means planning, right? So let me ask you this. Let me give you a scenario. You tell me if I'm being proactive or not. Because I'm trying to wrap my head around this in a way that makes sense. I've been playing Big Druid lately, and I'm like I said, we talked about this earlier. And sometimes I will equip the weapon and get it to 1 health. To 1 durability. And I'll have a board, and then I'll hold swinging on the weapon, even if I had enough room for those minions, because I'm expecting them to clear my board, and then that way I am ready to reload that next turn to swing with the weapon, then hit the drum circle, give them +2/+4. So is that being proactive, or is that being reactive in a way?
I can see what you mean about people might define these terms differently. In terms of how I'm thinking about proactive, I would say that is because it's playing to your game plan, and it's playing to what's going to be maximally pressuring, given that they may have a clear. Because there's this tension, right, between you want pressure, but you also want reload. And you want to be able to bridge. If you're a deck with a big swing turn, you want to be able to bridge to your swing turn. So something that is really about forwarding your own game plan in the way that's going to be most effective, at stopping them from stopping you, I guess, as opposed to just stopping them, is what kind of I would think of when people say proactive. But I also am realizing there are more than one way to define this. But in general, if you're playing a proactive deck or you're playing like the beatdown in a matchup, even if you're a control deck, you want your opponent to be on the back foot. And they are having to try to clear your boards or heal themselves or, react to what you're doing to try to just get themselves back on their game plan instead of you're sitting there like, okay, this is how I'm going to push the most, given that they might have a clear. So I guess it is technically reactive in that you're reacting to the fact that they might have a clear, but I think you can have a proactive strategy and still do that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like I said, it's not an uncomplicated subject. But you mentioned right there that you can still be the beatdown or you can still be proactive if you're playing a control deck. How do you decide, and this is another topic that came up, how do you decide, even if you're playing something control, where you need to be proactive versus reactive?
Really what I find is the most useful is to sit there and try to imagine what the later turns are going to look like in this game and how you're going to win. If you're playing Blood DK, I will imagine. I did play a few games of this in order to know my enemy. So if you're playing Blood DK and you queue into a control priest and you kind of imagine the future of this game, if you just kind of sit back and stay at good health, it's not great for you because the priest is just going to make more stuff than you can make, generally. So then you're going to say, okay, and priest does have healing, but it doesn't have as much healing as it used to have pre-rotation. So then you can start to see that the more likely winning game plan is I'm going to try to get Mograine down early. I'm going to try to, you actually have more minions in a way than they do. But try to get a bunch of minions down, see if I can push a little bit of damage before they just outvalue me. Or if you're a Blood DK facing something with really high inevitability, which we don't have a great example in the format right now, but if you have something like back when we had like Phylactery Warlock, you were facing down a Phylactery Warlock and you're like, if I just sit here, they are going to win. Right? You can't out-heal a Phylactery Warlock. So you have to think about, okay, I can't just react to their game plan because there's nothing I can do about their game plan if they get there. So therefore, I have to make them react to me and basically disrupt them by the fact that they can't do what they want to do because I'm pressuring them. And some control decks are better at that than other control decks. Like Control Priest is not great at pressuring, even when it needs to. But most decks have some ability to play the other way. And similarly, if you're playing an aggressive deck, you may be facing another deck that's even lower to the ground than you are, or that just they happen to get a draw that's just more aggressive than your draw was. And so then you have to kind of play on the back foot and just clear their board because you're only going to win if you get board control back. So unfortunately, that means you might not be able to go face as much as you normally would want to go. And you might have to play the control deck, even though you're an aggro deck, in that particular game. So it is about knowing the matchup, although when in doubt, do your deck's game plan, right? If you are like, I don't even know what my opponent's playing right now, then do your own game plan.
I hit a deck the other night on stream. They were playing Mage, and they whipped out the minion that dealt 1 damage to everything every time you cast a spell.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then they followed it with the minion that every time a minion takes 1 damage, they die.
Yes, Hollow Technician, I think.
That was a bit of a surprise to me.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a bit surprising.
In that case, there's a Day 9 video who's a Magic player and content creator where he has this whole rant about how if you don't know what your opponent's playing, it's probably not efficient, just kill him. He has a very amusing rant about it. Just kill them. Sometimes you may not be able to because they just cleared your whole board with Hollow Technician, but in general, when in doubt, just kill them. You can't play around stuff you don't know. So
Okay, and so we've touched on this a little bit, but uh, when do you decide? Again, so we said basically, hey, if like an aggro deck is more low to the ground than you are, you might have to be they're the beat down, you're the control kind of. But when do you decide to be proactive, and when is it better to be reactive?
So in general, your general game plan if you're playing a more aggressive deck, which the proactive decks, I think, that's kind of where my focus is here, is do as much damage as possible. Send your stuff face. Make them trade. And trading is for blockers. Use all of your mana this turn and next turn. You don't want to use all your mana this turn in a way that leaves you nothing. Like, you don't want to use the coin this turn if that gives you no play next turn. Most of the time. And you want to always be counting your damage, keeping board control only if that's going to help you do more damage next turn and the turn after. And of course, checking for lethal is better than keeping board control. I still do this sometimes, where I send my 2 damage into a threatening minion and then realize I had lethal if I had sent that 2 damage face. That's the most basic, count lethal first, and still. So it always bears reminding. I've also learned, if you can put your opponent to 1, just do it. They have so little they can do from a position of having 1 health. Unless you're very sure that you can have actual lethal next turn, then swing now is usually, if you're playing a proactive deck, again, that's its main game plan, usually ship it face. Exceptions might be, it's something like an anima extractor, you leave it alone, and you won't be able to kill them fast enough for them to be able to punish you for it. You're literally going to die, of course, right? Then you have to trade. If you don't have lethal and they have, lethal on board, obviously you need to trade. Or trading now will pay off in more damage next turn, almost certainly. You probably don't know for certain, but you're probably, if I do this value trade, then that'll mean I have this minion so I can do more damage next turn. But generally, if you are really on the, you want to try to make your board awkward for them to trade into, rather than making the trades yourself, if you can. And that's part of where the strategy, I think, comes in as well, where people say, well, you just always ship everything face, so what are you thinking about? But actually, you don't always ship everything face, and when do I not is a lot of what I'm still learning about. But in general, it's what maximizes my damage if you're playing an aggressive deck, or what maximizes my ability to hit my swing turn, have them in range of my swing turn.
And it's not always about killing them, it's about proactively is about disrupting their game plan, right? So I think a good example potentially of this, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the slime in Warlock is a good example. Because let's say they play their slime, and it's a 5/3, and they have a chat in there. You could leave it alone, go face. But what they're then going to do is they're going to cast a spell on it that kills it, resummons it, doubles it, whatever it is that Warlock's doing nowadays. And because you weren't proactive in dealing with it, they now have swung the board, and even though you knew it was coming, now they are in control, and now they can just keep habeas corpsing things and all that stuff. So, I think proactive doesn't necessarily always mean go face. It means, understanding what your opponent is doing, what your game plan is, and that you need to disrupt what they're doing in order to continue your game plan of hitting them in the face. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's true, and it depends again on whether you can deal with... So if you have the ability in your hand to kill it now, deal with a flesh behemoth, or whatever it's going to summon, and if it's a flesh behemoth... Well, one of my favorite things to do with the flesh behemoth is just make it so they can't kill it until I'm ready for it to die. But if you can deal with the slime now, then that's absolutely the best thing to do, unless you can kill them this turn, of course. But other times you might have to just hope that they don't have the thing that kills it themselves, and just make it so they can't kill their slime off, so you have an extra turn to get them over the top. So it's either denying them, right, proactively dealing with what they put out, or proactively killing them so that it doesn't matter that they put it out. But yeah, Chad Warlock is an interesting one when you're playing a low to the ground deck, because if they do get that on curve, you may or may not have a way to deal with it if it goes off. But if you do have a way to deal with it, then yeah, proactively dealing with it is probably the the right call. It just depends on the deck, of course.
Yeah, I played a couple games yesterday with the Druid, and on turn 2, I did a what was it, the 1 mana spell, discover a spell. It costs 2 less this turn, and it was in a mirror match. I believe it was a mirror match, and I said, you know what, I am going to take convoke the spirits, because I think I'm going to need this before the end of the game. And it ended up winning me the game in the end, because I ended up casting summon 6 1/1s, and then it cast the give your minions +2/+4 and taunt, and it did wonderful things. But like most of those times when I'm playing, especially in those mirrors, I'm proactively I think it's proactive. I'm like, my game plan is to their game plan is the same as mine basically. So hey, here's an incarceration. I'm gonna take this now because I know they're gonna play a Womper, and then I can incarcerate the Womper, taking it off the board for 3 turns. Then their hedge mage is just sitting there, and I'm going face. So I think that potentially theirs too is it's not just about getting your damage to the face. It's about how to proactively deal with what you know your opponent's going to do in order to continue going.
Yeah, that's a great point of thinking ahead to what does my opponent want to do, and what is my best way to not let that work for them, and keep going with my game plan. Is it to get the incarceration ahead of time because you know they're going to have a Womper, or at something out of the Womper if you don't manage to kill it fast enough, or if you don't have a chance to use the incarceration right away, or I'm playing Unholy and I discover the Scourge, and it's a game where I know that I'm probably not going to get there just through the board normally. So I go, okay, 7 mana the Scourge off of my Nerubian Vizier, sure. That has won me like mirror matches before. So yeah, thinking ahead to what's going to further your game plan, including understanding ways in which you can't keep on your game plan if they got Womper off before you. That's going to stop you in your tracks unless you thought ahead of, or were able to find something, for example, like incarceration. And then you're like, well, good job on the Womper. I'm going to keep going with what I was doing.
And I'm wondering how many of our listeners are asking themselves, what is incarceration? That is this week's
good
puzzler.
Question.
You can go figure that one out for yourselves. So one thing that I think helped me improve my game in general was learning to not necessarily hold things for value. Sometimes you just got to play your cards. And a lot of times you would have a card, you'd be like, oh, this text is great. I have to combo with this, and I do this, and then the X happens, and the Y happens. And instead of playing it on turn 4, because that's your best play. And I would say sometimes your 4 mana 4/5 is better than not playing anything to try to get value out of it later. That, I think, feels like a very important proactive topic. Well, let's speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. That's something that I think was also something that really improved my play when I started thinking about that more. And that when I watch really top players, they will often use a card. And I'm like, wait, that's not the optimal way to use that card. But in this game, it is the optimal play for this situation. Maybe you end up playing a Amalgam of the Deep as a 2/3 because you really just have to. That's all you've got. And you need board, or you need to contest something on the board. Or in the sort of burn undead priest that ran Shadowed Spirits, don't hold your undying allies for like this great value turn where you get like 2 Shadowed Spirits and a Haunting Nightmare, and it's awesome. You probably wouldn't need that if you had just had it on just the Shadowed Spirit on turn 3 or turn 2 with the coin. With the Swarm Undead Priest, you do want to hold it a little more because you need that value, otherwise you run out of gas really fast. So you have to know your deck, but oftentimes, yeah, if something's the best play now, especially if you don't have another decent play, or you really need to deal with something on the board and this will deal with it, even if it seems suboptimal. Sometimes you might have been saving your Liadrin for something, but then they played like a really threatening minion and you can clear it with Liadrin plus like a couple 1/1s, just do it. Because, a card that's still in your hand when you die has no value.
And I always think of it like, so the High Cultist is a card that's like that too. You try to hold for maximum value. And the dream play is they clear 2 of your Shadowed Spirits that had undead allies on it, and then you clear 2 and you play the Cultist, and now you have a board full of them again, yay. And that happens sometimes, but sometimes you just gotta play it to get an egg and a arms dealer back and just say, okay, I now have a little bit of board I can kind of contest with here and keep that pressure on.
Yeah.
But like, the one thing I always try to envision is like, yeah, does it suck to play a Liadrin on turn 2 with nothing to follow it up with? Yes. I think of that as taunt. I'm playing against a Totem Shaman. They are going to run me the heck over because I am not getting what I need fast enough. So I'm going to play Liadrin. They're gonna kill it, sure, but that bought me a turn. I might still lose anyway, but at least it bought me a turn because they're going to clear it because that has taunt on it. It doesn't have taunt, but it essentially has taunt on it.
Right.
And so now maybe I can get, the next turn where I get Boogie down or whatever, and I can start to try to stabilize. And so sometimes you have to do that. And I think a lot of people often just say, well, no, I'm getting no value out of that. Too bad. You're getting value of that turn, and that's all you need at that moment.
Yes. No, and sometimes you can think, it's... The Liadrin can be really great if you use her from behind and then you're able to retake the board, but if they're going to have boards so much that you can't retake the board even though you saved her, then you might as well have played her, right? So it's really... And yeah, if you could play like Liadrin or you could play something else, you probably would have played something else, but yeah, trying to get maximum, especially if you're not Control Priest, sometimes even if you are, trying to get maximum value out of your cards is something that you can do when you can afford to do it, not something that you necessarily always do. If you think about what's going to actually put you in the better position in the game, overall, sometimes that's going to be a little bit ahead early, or to not let the Totem Shaman completely roll you over, and then have to come back from behind in a deck that's not great at coming back from behind. So...
And it's also matchup dependent. If you're playing against something like a Death Knight and you're playing Rogue, and your only play on turn 2 is Putricide, you might not want to do that against the Death Knight because they have many different ways that they could probably clear that on turn 2. Then there's other decks where, like if you're playing against Paladin, depending on what they already have on board, if their board is clear, then yeah, you can run it out there. But maybe the alternative case there would be against the Death Knight is just a hero power until you can actually follow it up. So it isn't just, hey, should I just throw this out to throw it out there? Having that matchup knowledge helps a lot. And the more you play, the more. So if you consistently run out your Putricide against Death Knights and they consistently kill it, if it's the only thing that's going to prevent you from maybe getting snowball, fine. But if you have the option of the dagger there, you might want to dagger there. You'll learn that as you go. But so it's not a hard fast rule to just play the cards whether or not they have you have nothing else to do. But it's a general rule that people hold on to cards too long to get more value than they should. Sometimes it's okay to swing a Glaive Tar to get 1 card or 2 cards. You don't need to hold it for a full relay. Like these are the things that I think once you figure out, help you out a lot. Well, what do you think? Any final advice for our listeners on being proactive?
I think we've covered a lot. I definitely, I know that a lot of what we said is to really know the matchup. And to the extent that you're able to, look at what are the popular lists, what are they running, play different things so that you have a sense of how they go, that's really helpful. But also, that's not always possible to be up on all the decks. And so also just knowing kind of what is your ideal, the deck that you're playing, what is your ideal game plan, and then kind of how do you win. And that helps you kind of know things like, well, I don't win if I lose the board, so I'm going to play something out on the board anyway, versus I win by this swing turn later, and that's like the main way I win, so I better hold on to this card. That's crucial for my swing turn. So even if you don't have a chance to know every matchup inside and out, you can pay attention to the ones you do run into and pay attention to what is your deck really trying to do. Because being proactive really is about how do I do what my deck wants to do in a way, and how do I kind of proactively stay a step ahead of my opponent. Ideally, that also means knowing what your opponent's going to do and preventing them from doing that, but it's knowing your own game plan is the most important thing, especially if you're crunched for time.
Right, and unless it's controlled for you, so you don't want to waste another 30 minutes of your life. Even if you're playing an unfavorable matchup, play those matchups out. Learn how they beat you. Maybe even play that deck. But like, if you just kind of nope out of a game because hey, I usually lose to Death Knight in this situation, then you're never going to learn to find those outs that will help you win that matchup and maybe other matchups. So play those games out. Again, unless it's like unless it's like a control priest and you don't want to be there for like 30 minutes and you just played 3 control priests in a row and you had enough. Like, that's understandable, but for the most part, play those unfavorables. That's how you learn this, so you get better. And remember, even if unfavorable, you lose 70% of those games because it's that polarized, that still means you win 30%. So, stay on it. But I think it's time for dessert. How about you? What do you think about that?
That sounds good.
All right. So, as Doc usually says here, please leave us a review if you like the show. We're growing. We're still here. We're episode 32, I believe, right now. We have no plans on stopping. With more and more people listening every week. We appreciate it. Word of mouth helps. If you have a friend that is playing Hearthstone and they're trying to learn how to be a better player, we're not a news show. That's what Coin Concede's for. That's not what Blizz is for. That's not what Squelch is for. But we're trying to help you and ourselves learn how to be better Hearthstone players. And hopefully we even if we help some people, maybe not everybody, maybe everything we're telling you already know, maybe it reinforces some stuff. But the more people we can get listening to the show, hopefully the better we can help everyone get a little better at Hearthstone. Magesa, one thing we've started asking people lately is, what's your favorite dessert?
Well, generally, if there's chocolate and or caramel involved, I got these chocolate caramel cookies. There's like chocolate chip caramel cookies. Amazing. Also was really good to like break up and then have with ice cream. So it's hard. Yeah, I would say that's one of my favorite recent desserts. But asking me to pick just one as a person with a major sweet tooth is tricky.
That's fair. I'm assuming you're a fan of the Rolos?
Yes. Yeah, chocolate, caramel in the same place. Definitely. Definitely a fan.
And where can people find you on the social medias?
So I am not as much on social media as much as Discord, but I am Magesa8 on Twitter. I have not been tweeting a lot, but I am going to if the site doesn't have a dystopian collapse. Try to be on there more as
I noticed this today. You are criminally unfollowed, so underfollowed. So please go give her a follow. Encourage her to get on there and tweet a little more. No, so here's the thing. Since the Great Takeover, the sky is falling, and I understand he keeps doing things that are stupid. But everyone keeps coming and saying, hey, I'm on this platform now. Here's my thing. Hey, I'm on this platform now. Hey, I'm on that platform. You know where they keep posting that? On Twitter. You know where they keep posting? Twitter. You know where people still are? Twitter. So until people that I follow stop posting on Twitter, every time there's a new panic, like today it's threads on Facebook or something like that, until there's actually a lack of people talking on Twitter, I'm just staying there. And you can find me there at Tito Santana HS. And you can find Doc McButt there at Doc McButt. And you can also find me on Twitch at Tito Santana HSS. I think you were about to say something, and I kind of just rolled into my spiel there. So.
Oh, no worries. No, I was just going to say that is, I think wanting to get more into the Hearthstone community space, I'm seeing that is, for better or for worse, where it is. And so, I'm hoping to get a little more on there, and definitely would love to hear from anybody who's listening to the show. So thank you so much for listening.
Now, I would suggest on Twitter, so since we're talking about Twitter a little bit, get alerts for some people if you want instant news or up to date news. Now, don't put your alerts on Ridiculous Hat, because you will get way too many alerts. Your phone won't stop dinging. I personally have alerts on Celestalon, Songbird, which Cora, Deck Tech, and a couple others. Now, you do get some redundancy there, because once Play Hearthstone tweets out, hey, here's the new Titan, they all retweet it. So there's a little redundancy there, but you get a lot of information by having people that you like providing your information that don't tweet constantly, having alerts to them, because then you just get that information right there. So I suggest that if you're just trying to stay up on things and you want to know, hey, when the next thing's happening. How about shout-outs? You got any shout-outs this week?
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me on. And thank you to my partner for his support of the Hearthstone that he doesn't play. And to Coin Concede for having me on, and that Discord for being a really great place in the community. And I'm also excited to have joined the Bread and Butter Discord. And a shout out to the teacher of my grad school class, who's really making sure that we know our stuff and are not going to go out unprepared into the workforce, which is good, actually. As the first class I'm taking in this program, it's actually encouraging, because it says to me that I'm actually going to learn something here. I'm going to come out qualified, and I'd better make sure I stay on top of my work at the beginning of the week and don't leave it to the end. So.
Fair enough. I was going to say you're shouting out your partner, but I guess he's not going to be listening to this podcast. So, and I'm just going to shout out to our boy Doc, who wasn't feeling that well tonight. He should be back next week. I know people say that we should be telling you guys who are going to be on next week, so I'll tell you that next week we're going to have a very special guest. But anyway, I think that's our show. Magesa, thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it. Very excited. Hopefully we'll have you on again in the future and talking more Hearthstone. But until then, I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
Bye. Thank you.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.